And welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samueli, and it is 9:06 p.m. Central European Time. Pitch black outside. The days are really drawing in now. It's really getting very, very grim. You know, General Winter or Father Winter or whatever is coming. So the dismal, sunless days are really palpable. I'll say they're palpable. It's not something you could actually focus on. Anyway, on a more cheery note, welcome to everybody who has joined me. Really appreciate it. And Mary, always good to see you, Mary. He says, I still think Vance has to have some DEI with poor and alcoholism, things we were ashamed of um, in the past. Um, and then Putin says, when will you decide Russia is winning? Well, I will decide Russia is winning when Russia is winning. And the measure will be um, by the goals that Putin had set out when he announced the launch of the special military operations on February the 24th, 2022. How close are we to achieving those goals? He was very specific: demilitarization, denazification, and the independence of the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics. Now, none of those objectives have as yet been achieved. That's 2.5 years ago. And Putin, since then, has added two other provinces of Ukraine as essentially part of the Russian Federation, which is Kherson and Zaporozhye. Neither of them is remotely under Russian control. So that hasn't been accomplished. Now, that's 2.5 years. Wars take a long time. I mean, the World War II was a 5.5 year undertaking. So we can't judge anything by what happens at the point of 2.5 years. However, I'm not going to join. All I'm asking for is don't join the sort of the Xenon crowd, the high fives, Russia's winning, Russia's won, we're going to take this, we're going to take that, we're going to divide up Kiev, we're going to take Odessa, blah, 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 blah. Russia isn't in any position to do any of that. Again, that could change. We'll see what happens this winter. But I want to retain a critical, skeptical approach, and see. And again, it's the measure. Everything. Let's just measure. If we say, well, one side is winning, you say, okay, how close is this side to achieving the objectives that it had set out? How close is it even? That Russia has overturned the gains that Ukraine had made in September of 2022. Well, it hasn't done that. Kherson City, which is ostensibly a part of the Russian Federation, is under Ukrainian control. So Ukraine took it in September 2022, and almost 2 years on, it's still under the control of Ukraine. So I don't, I'm just sorry, I'm just not joining in the let's break out the champagne because of this fantastic victory crowd. Anyway, Mary Grossman, Mary, it's always good, always good to see you, as I've said. My internet was down 4 times in 4 months, so now I'm making up for it. The Vance post was to apply to Cynthia on Vance. Well, we talked a little bit about this on Tuesday, and you know, I want to be fair. I don't want to say mean things about people, but, you know, when they haven't really been tested. Vance has, you know, shot up like a rocket. He's very young. He's done good things. He's said good things, but you know, you want to be cautious. Um, this is somebody who was denouncing Trump in very virulent terms in 2016. Then he had a sudden change of heart. Um, so you obviously have to wonder, well, will he have any other changes of heart? Maybe not. But I think that one just has to be a little cautious about, you know, it's just like, you know, we talked about Peter Thiel the other day. Well, you know, he said some good things, but there's troubling aspects to Peter Thiel as well. I mean, his company, Palantir, is clearly very much integrated within Israel's war effort. Israel is using this artificial intelligence provided by Palantir to target Palestinians. So it's been involved in quite extensive killings of Palestinians. Now, Thiel doesn't do day-to-day operations, but this is where he's making his money. He makes his money on Palantir, and he's making a lot of money on having Israel as its client. And the CEO of Palantir, guy, I think when Katz is, I think his surname, can't remember his first name. He is fervently pro-Israel, zealously, avidly pro-Israel. Now, Thiel hasn't said that much about Israel, and when recently he was confronted about Palantir's operations in Israel, he seemed a little befuddled, and didn't know what to say. But he did say, "Well, I will defer to Israel," which didn't exactly inspire confidence. I will defer to Israel. Thiel is also involved in that whole national conservatism movement that we've talked about. And national conservatism is one of these bogus, fraudulent, phony movements created by Khazoni. We talked about Khazoni quite many times. It's a fake. He's based in Israel. He runs all these think tanks, foundations, and he sets up these big conferences, national conservatism, to which he invites these various Trumpians, in different countries. So he would invite, Suella Braverman and Nigel Farage, and national conservatives, count me in, I'm down for that. But the whole purpose of national conservatism is to suggest that Israel is the paradigm of the sovereign state, the paradigm of the nation state, the paradigm of the independent state defying the globalists, defying all the international institutions, just wants to insist on national identity, and that's way, and that's how you sell Israel to the Trumpians, to the Nigel Farages, the Suella Bravermans, and then Viktor Orban's. Oh I'm a conservative and I'm a nationalist. National conservatism, count me in. But count you in for what? Count you in for an Israel propaganda operation. I mean, it's all run out of Jerusalem. Now Thiel is involved in that, but you always want to be fair. He's not a leader of a national conservative movement. I mean, he's kind of involved with Khazoni, but Khazoni, he is a kind of a sinister guy. Now, Okay, let's before I talked about more of these comments, I want to get something off my chest. I this one of these phony, fraudulent, bogus, um, dishonest operations going on at the moment. This is the war against tourism. It just came out of nowhere. And the moment you see that the media are hyping this and they're all reporting on it favorably, you know something is being played on us. We are being sold a bill of goods. So apparently throughout Europe, there are people rising up against tourists. Now, now on the face of it, you think, well, what's wrong with tourists? I mean, they're obviously annoying. If you're living, I don't know, in country X, and you're surrounded by people talking a different language, and they're just goofing off, and they don't know anything about the place, and they just want to find the tourist attractions or whatever. They're annoying. But why the hatred directed at them? And so you begin to suspect that somebody is directing this. Somebody is manipulating this because the media have embraced this unquestioningly. And of course, behind it all is Soros, because there were a number of reasons. I mean, first of all, when the people who complain about tourism and they say, oh, housing prices are really going through the roof. No one can afford rents anymore. Public transport, it's almost unusable because it's so, weighed down by excessive demand. Now, what aren't they complaining about? What aren't they bringing up when they bring up housing shortages and burdens on public transportation? Yes, they're not bringing up mass immigration, because that's what's causing housing shortages. That's what's causing soaring rents. That's what's causing huge burdens on public transportation. That's what's causing traffic jams, mass immigration. So it's amazing that in all these places, Barcelona, the Azores, Paris, wherever there are these protests against tourists, no one ever brings up mass immigration. Because tourists, they come, they stay a week, they stay 2 weeks, and then they go. They don't have any long-term impact, they go. Mass immigrants, however, do have a long-term impact. They don't go anywhere, they stay. You can't get rid of them, because once they're there, even if you go through the whole legal procedure and their asylum applications are denied, there's endless appeals to be made, and no one ever gets deported. And that does indeed add enormously to all the burdens on public services. It does add enormously to rising rents, helps to drive down wages. And it's strange that no one is bringing that up. So instead, you're picking on people who are actually bringing money in to your community. So when you go to Budapest, say, you're bringing money into Budapest. You're keeping bars, restaurants, or whatever going. Even if it's Airbnb, however annoying it is, you're giving money to people renting out their apartments, and then they have money, and then they spend it all. So basically, they're bringing money in. Immigrants, however, don't bring money in. Immigrants are taking money out because they are using public services. Often they're actually wiring money home, so taking money out of the economy. That's strange. No one brings that up. Why don't they bring it up? Well, because the people who are promoting this whole anti-tourism fad are the people like Soros, this evil, poisonous organization, which one, obviously wants to encourage mass immigration. B, wants to profoundly discourage people traveling. They hate the idea of people traveling. First of all, they hate the idea that anyone using fossil fuels to go from one place to another. That's awful. That's fossil fuels. But they also hate the idea of having to share space with all this scum. The scum was suddenly in Barcelona. What is this low-life scum that we have to share space with? They don't like them. I'm kind of reminded, a few generations ago, Herbert Marcuse, and this was a Frankfurt School. Frankfurt School has been extremely influential on Western culture. So Marcuse, who was a kind of one of the leading figures of the Frankfurt School, came to the United States, and then took up a professorship at the University of California, San Diego. He wrote this book, One-Dimensional Man. The theme of it was repressive tolerance. That somehow, we live in this society that ostensibly are tolerant, but in fact it's repressive. But without going into his arguments about what he meant by repressive tolerance, he has that point. He has a section in it, famous section in that One-Dimensional Man, is that I can't stand the sights, sounds, and smells of the hoi polloi in the art galleries. You see, the whole point was Marcuse couldn't stand the fact that, these are hoi polloi, they go to these art galleries. And again, while, it's kind of annoying when people go to art galleries. I don't really know much about art, but everyone feels that, I have to go to an art gallery. I'm here, I'm in New York, so I better go to MoMA. I don't know the first thing about modern art, but I have to go to MoMA. I better go to the Guggenheim. I have no idea what the hell the Guggenheim is, but I got to go to the Guggenheim. So yeah, it's annoying. But the point is that a lot of things are annoying, but you don't make it a matter of principle. But for the people who run this kind of anti-tourism movement, they really do hate the sight, sounds, and smell of the hoi polloi. What is this scum? All these people, these people, accountants, doing here, in inhabiting our art galleries. What are they doing here, desecrating our beautiful parks? So they hate all of that. They hate all of these things, and again, they hate the very idea that anybody at all should be traveling or enjoying a good life. That's all reserved for them, for Soros or the World Economic Forum. And so they created this fake, phony, artificial, bogus movement, which is, anti-tourist protests. And so now, city after city, we get these protests against tourists. Anybody can see this. This is a fraud. And the first thing anybody should be asking is, who organized this? Who came up with this nonsense of protesting against tourists who are not doing any harm other than being annoying? But they're bringing money along with their annoyances. But never, never, never bring up the subject of mass immigration, which is a serious social problem, and it is ruining your countries. It's ruining your countrysides, ruining your beautiful cities. We can see in all the ways in which it's ruining these great European cities, a lot more than tourists ever ruined European cities. And you can see this. It's, you go to Paris, see what Paris is like now compared to what Paris was like 30, 40 years ago. Yeah, that's gone mass immigration, not because of tourism. So you can see how fraudulent this whole thing is. Anyway, let's take a look at the locals page. This is our locals community. So let's look at the, the people, what our locals community is saying. So, so we have Danoki, always good to see you. Yosh, George, apparently Putin, the white Christians' last hope, led in 2024, 4 million migrants, 700,000 naturalized, mainly Central Asian Muslims. Yeah, that's a very interesting issue that that is kind of bringing in the migrants, and the ostensible justification for that is, well, we need the labor. Our economy is booming, so we need the labor. But of course, the argument um, about cheap labor, applies to Russia as much as it applies to everywhere else, which is you're creating additional problems for yourself by bringing in cheap labor. In the first place, and once people arrive, they don't go anywhere. And while it may be true, oh, Russia has stricter, um, bureaucratic norms, like, that you have to check your papers, it's very, very corrupt. Once you get your working visa, you can just simply get to stay on. And of course, the Crocus City Hall attack was perpetrated by Tajiks, and the Tajiks are the people who are being brought in Russia, and again, you're creating problems for yourself by bringing in a lot of people who have all sorts of fanatical ideas, very, very different culture, very different historical practices, and we see that all the time. I mean, and therefore, but the interesting thing is the extent to which Putin defines Russia in almost the in the kind of Western way, which is that you don't really think of the Russia in the more traditional way, in the way conservative way. Oh yeah, Russia. Well, that's the Russian language, Russian history, the Orthodox Church. All the great figures of Russia. Ivan the Terrible. And Alexander Nevsky, and so on. All the various aspects of it that you would have thought of Russia, and particularly, and I want to emphasize, particularly the Orthodox Church, which even Stalin recognized as being at the core of the Russian national identity. So instead of that, Putin kind of talks about Russia is just a home for, all sorts of people who subscribe vaguely to, the Ruski Mir, the Russian world. So when you think about that, you say, well, that's not too different from the idea of America as propounded by Biden and Harris, which is, well, America's an idea. It's not really about a nation, history, a distinct people with a distinct culture. No, it's an idea, some vague idea, and anyone can just come in, claim to subscribe to this vague idea, and then suddenly, hey, you're an American. And Putin kind of does similar things. I mean, I don't know how many of these speeches he delivers in which he boasts about how many mosques were built in the Russian Federation last year. And he thinks, well, this is something that Russia needs to be very proud of. And this is very strange because, again, you think, well, that's still not really what Russia is about. So it's one thing to say, okay, well, we'll be tolerant towards people who are here. It's another thing to say, well, we're basically just completely transforming our country. And once it just gets overwhelmed by a Muslim population, once it gets overwhelmed by how many mosques are around, the mosques soon start outnumbering the Orthodox churches, then, the same thing can be said about Russia as it was to say about Europe and about the United States. In what sense does this country have any connection with what this country once was. I mean, you look at Britain. I mean, Britain. I mean, it's just unrecognizable to what it was, because essentially it's brought in millions upon millions of people from different parts of the world, and they have inevitably transformed the place. The notion that you come in and then you say, "Hey, now I'm British," or "Hey, now I'm an American," doesn't work. And the same thing is the problem with Russia. So it's kind of interesting again that the conservatives have this very romantic, charming idea of what Russia really is, and it's at odds with the reality. Just like, I mean, on a different point, which is the COVID restrictions. So you look around for a kind of heroic country that resisted the restrictions, didn't impose the vaccine mandate. Russia, no COVID restrictions in Russia. No vaccine mandate in Russia. Yes, very strict COVID restrictions in Russia, and yes, there were vaccine mandates in Russia. But people want to have their, I idolize some mythical country, and so that's in Russia. But the issue of the ongoing flow of migrants is going to become a very serious problem, because if they just keep bringing all these people in, bringing in more and more Tajiks, because hey, we've got a booming economy, then Russia's going to have a very serious problem very soon. Mary Grossman says, the comment on RT by Scott Bennett on 7th, I think that the Democrats' plan was Nikki versus Hillary, meaning another assassination was in the works. Your thoughts? Well, that's very interesting. I mean, we were talking about this the other day. What would have happened had the assassination attempt on Trump succeeded? It was obviously very close. And obviously, the convention would have been thrown open. So then the question would have been, who do the delegates that were pledged to Trump, whom would they go for? Now, they obviously want somebody who's a Trumpian and America first, and so on. And that would be one argument. The other argument is, well, who got the most delegates next to Trump? And that was obviously Nikki Haley. So it's very unlikely that the delegates that had been pledged to Trump would have gone for Nikki Haley. They hate Nikki Haley. She's a neocon, an interventionist. They're not going to go for her. However, it's quite likely that some kind of a deal would have been worked out at the convention, and and Nikki Haley would have been on the ticket. I don't think she would have been the number one on the ticket. I think it would have been probably somebody like J.D. Vance, who's the most obvious candidate to be Trump's heir apparent. He's the successor to Trump. So I think what is likely to have emerged is something like a Vance Haley ticket, or maybe Vance Marco Rubio ticket, something like so. You got a neocon as number two, and then an anti-neocon as the number one. But either way, I mean, I think that Nikki Haley would have had a good shot at being on the ticket, even if it would have been as the running mate. And then, of course, once you're the running mate, you're obviously in a very good position to get the number one slot. Hillary is, I think, a little different because I mean, if you think about once they made the decision to push aside Biden, then there was it would have had to be Harris. I mean, there's no one else. You know, if you bundle aside Biden, then it's Harris. So then the question is, would Harris select Hillary as her running mate? Um, you know, it's not impossible, but you know, Harris would have needed to get her head examined um, to have Hillary as her running mate, because again, your lifespan is immediately reduced to about an additional year or two, because once the Clintons get a sniff of the throne, they're going to push aside, you know, one way or another, whoever is occupying the throne. So now maybe the party would have insisted to Harris that you have to take Hillary as your running mate, but I'm not getting that impression. The impression I'm getting is that the party is going to push Harris to take somebody like Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, or the governor of Kentucky, kind of a sort of centrist figure. I don't think they're going to go for Gretchen Whitmer. I think those two women would be just, it would be a vote loser. They're not going to win an election with Harris and Whitmer. So I think that the party leaders, the donors, the people who make these decisions, I think they're going to push Harris to take Josh Shapiro. For them, the only thing that they're interested in is winning in November. So the question with Hillary is, do they believe that a ticket with Hillary on it will be a winner? I just don't. I think the party got badly burned, badly humiliated in 2016. They gave it to Hillary. They thought it would be a pushover. Trump would be easy to beat. And it was a disaster. And I don't know whether they're going to take the risk with Hillary again. So I don't think the party will force Harris to take Hillary. I mean, I may be wrong, but I tend to think it'll be Josh Shapiro who'll be her running mate. And Mary goes on. Okay, and then Cynthia, always very good to see you. Cynthia says, J.D. Vance seems to be selling himself as the male version of Sarah Palin. His strategy, as was hers in 2008, is to attract rural white voters, as well as voters across the South. And since these voters tend to be Christian fundies, Judy may indeed be right when she said that his support for Israel has more to do with his religious views than his desire to profit from war, which isn't the case for Peter Thiel. War profiteering is his only reason for backing Israel, no doubt. I agree with you. I think it's, in the case of Thiel, it's war profiteering at this company, Palantir, big artificial intelligence company that is being really aiding mightily Israeli war effort. I mean, they're just making a lot of money on that. Having said that, I mean, he's the founder. Vance is the founder. Thiel is the founder of Palantir. The CEO of Palantir, Katz. I mean, he's a fervent supporter of Israel. I mean, he loves Israel. So it's much more than just simply making money. Vance, I think that he does genuinely believe in a kind of that conservative populism, and the Israel thing, I think, is just, to be honest, is just a matter of. I think it's a matter of opportunism for him. I mean, he's never really shown much interest um, in Israel or Jewish things up until the time that he suddenly became a serious political figure. And then once you become a serious political figure in the Republican Party, then what goes with that? Well, it's fervent support for Israel. So I think it's just, I think it's kind of a matter of opportunism for him. But I agree with you that he's going obviously for rural white voters, Christians, um, and yeah, it's similar to Sarah Palin. Um, Palin was kind of an interesting case because she actually ran a pretty good campaign in 2008 as McCain's running mate, because McCain was completely dead in the water. I mean, the Republicans, I don't know what the hell they thought they were doing in nominating McCain as the standard bearer, because there was no way in the world McCain was going to win a general election. I mean, it's just it's completely ridiculous. But when he put her on the ticket, the ticket really recovered because she did have a genuine appeal of the kind McCain had none. I mean, McCain was entirely a creature of the elites, Republican elites, media elites. They who loved McCain and they loved the idea of McCain, but the public just absolutely detested him. But once he put Palin on the ticket, then suddenly, I mean, the race was never going to be competitive. But the defeat wasn't quite as disastrous as at one time it threatened to be. And of course, the media all hated Palin, made fun of her, and so on. But then she kind of faded away, and I've never entirely been certain why exactly she just disappeared. I mean, she resigned as governor of Alaska. Never really explained why she resigned, and then just kind of faded away as a political force. I mean, so in 2008, after that campaign, to be honest, I mean, she looked like somebody who was going to be a good, a likely nominee in 2012, and she would have done a lot better in 2012 as the GOP nominee than Romney did. I mean, he was Richie Rich. I mean, it was, again, you have to what the hell were the Republicans thinking when they nominated somebody so utterly vapid and utterly lacking any ability to relate to ordinary people as Romney. But Palin had that. Palin had that ability, but why she just faded away the way she did, I've never I've never understood. And maybe there were things, that the deep state or whatever, they had things on her which they threatened to release if she continued to pursue her political ambitions. Because that's the only way I can explain why someone who obviously had great political talent and was still young and made a great impression, why she just disappeared like that. So you have to think there was something in her closet that they threatened to reveal and destroy. But just to conclude, I mean, I think that I don't think Israel is something that J.D. Vance really thinks that much about. I think it's just really, a matter of opportunism with him. He's, he's now the number two in the GOP. What else are you going to do? I mean, you're not going to say, well, I think we should take a more balanced approach to the Middle East. Now, of course, you say, yeah, I'm with Israel. Show me the Wailing Wall. Uh, anyway, Cynthia goes on. Another reason, well, there's a picture here. Sarah Palin, country first. So Sarah Palin in a bikini. Yeah, she's kind of attractive. She was certainly attractive in 2008. Even though when she was in that debate against Biden, and she did quite decently in that debate. I mean, she was obviously inexperienced debating, and she did okay, but she had a very annoying habit of winking, and winking in general is a very annoying habit. But she kept doing it during that debate. Every time she made a point during the debate, she winked to somebody or other in the crowd, and it was just really grating. So she kind of, somewhat stepped on her own performance by doing that. But otherwise, she did okay in that debate. Anyway, Cynthia goes on. Another reason J.D. Vance may be trying to attract Southern voters is that he can get enough votes in Georgia to tip the swing state into going entirely red. And what better way for him to do this than to portray himself as a good old Southern redneck? Not sure if that's an accurate portrayal of himself, but I'm sure that's the main reason why Trump picked him to be his VP. Peter Thiel is certainly his mentor, but Sarah Palin is the one whom he looks up to most. I mean, I think I agree with that. I mean, I think so. I think that he obviously is someone who is going to help in the South. He's going to help with rural white voters. He's going to help in Georgia. Trump is doing okay in Georgia. He's got a good lead in Georgia. Got a decent lead in Arizona, North Carolina. He doesn't want to be worrying about those states, two of which he lost in 2020. But I think he's also useful in the key battleground states, which are Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. And I think that's where Vance will be most useful, because he will be making the pitch about the forgotten American, certainly the rural white voter, but who obviously, you've got farmers, who need protection from cheap agricultural imports, but the manufacturing industry, he's going to be saying, yeah, we've got to protect our own people. We need to bring back manufacturing into the American heartland. And I think since that is his message, I think he'll be very useful in those industrial Midwestern states. So yeah, well, these are the forgotten Americans. The jobs were shipped overseas. That was the message that Trump hammered again and again throughout 2016, and it won him those Midwestern states. He kind of somewhat forgot to run with that message in 2020, or at least he didn't press it as vigorously as he should have done. But yeah, that's obviously that's going to be Vance's thing. Yeah, I may be a hillbilly, but I want Americans to be looked after. I want, this is the forgotten Americans, and especially the forgotten whites who've been, crushed and beaten down. They become strung out on drugs. Why? Because there are no jobs. The jobs have been shipped overseas, and so when there are no jobs, people get demoralized. People get prone to drug addiction, crime, suicide, all these terrible things. So once you can bring jobs back, and then that's things will start to look up for Americans. So I think that's going to be Vance's message, and it's a plausible message. I mean, he says, "Yeah, these are the people I grew up with. We are the forgotten Americans, and we need a government that is going to protect us." So I think it's a good pick, no question. So that's why I don't take, I at this stage don't feel that strongly about the issue of Vance's obeisance to Israel, because, well, what do you expect him to do? I mean, it's like, to say, if you intend to have any kind of a career in the Republican Party, then you're going to just tell us how wonderful Israel is. Interesting. So I think that's it. Thiel, yeah, is Thiel is certainly his. I don't know what he exactly mentor. Thiel was his. He kind of launched his career. Thiel launched Vance's career, but as I said, I do have serious doubts about Thiel, but Vance at this stage, I think, seems like at the very least, I mean, he seems like a very good choice. You gotta be realistic. You're not gonna get, you're not gonna get the perfect person in there, because the perfect person isn't going to win any votes. So I don't have an issue as yet with Vance, but we'll see. We'll see. I tend to be a pessimist. So I'm sure we'll be here in a year or two's times, and we'll say, God, I've really had it. I've had it up to here with Vance, but not just yet. Anyway, thank you so much, Cynthia. And then Mary says, I still think Vance has to have some DEI with poor and alcoholism. Okay, we talked about that. So where are we? Yeah. Okay. Well. All right, let's go back here. Okay. Now, Danaki says Musk's 45 million a month for Trump has turned out to be a big dud. Yeah, I noticed that. Very, very strange. So, we had that whole big news item that Musk would be donating $45 million a month for the next 4 months until the election to a Trump super PAC. That's a serious chunk of change. It's $180 million. But now Musk has said, no, I never said that. So I get we need to find out what the hell he said. I repeated it, but without actually checking what was the origin of the story, because everybody repeated it. So, but it's very strange for Musk to turn around and say, "Oh no, I didn't really mean it." I saw today Musk was denouncing the Democrats as completely beholden to anti-Semitism. Musk is really completely owned. It's really the Stockholm syndrome. Remember he was criticized for anti-Semitism because he had endorsed a tweet, and boom! Ever since then, he took a trip to Auschwitz, took a trip to Israel, and he's now bought lock, stock, and barrel with the Israel lobby. So there he was today denouncing the Democrats for anti-Semitism, which they didn't really do. I mean, it's hard to say what was the anti-Semitism. Rashid Tlaib, she at least had the the courtesy, she actually showed up for the Netanyahu's address, so she had a sign, war criminal and so on. But at least she showed up. I can't see where the anti-Semitism is. I mean, but the fact that he's going around tossing the stupid term around, which he himself was very stupidly accused of anti-Semitism, and particularly he brought that lawsuit against was it Media Matters? I think it was Media Matters that deliberately messed around with the algorithm to suggest that advertisers on X had their advertisements next to Nazi tweets. And he said this is complete fraud. How this was perpetrated, these advertisers did not, because it was just a way of engineering. They kept renewing the page, refreshing the page, until you could get a screenshot of an ad next to a Nazi tweet, or a tweet by a supposed neo-Nazi. And that's how they went to the advertisers and say, hey, look, did you realize that your ads were next to Nazi tweets? And of course, there's, oh, this is terrible. We're going to pull our ads from X or Twitter. And he filed a lawsuit against that. So, but now it's going, now he seems to have been completely taken possession of by the Israel lobby. He's going around with these ridiculous slogans about anti-Semitism. Anyway, I'd like to see a little bit more action in the tip jar, because you know what happens. I have to go talk to those awful hounds who just bite my head off, literally, when I don't deliver on the tips. And it's very, very painful, extremely unpleasant. I don't mind. I can just talk like this for hours on end, and I don't care about the money. But those hounds, they do care about money. In fact, they don't really care about anything other than money. So, and that's why they give me such a hard time. So, if you want to just make life a little easier for me, just see if you can shove something into the tip jar. And then I'll have an easier time of it tomorrow. Anyway, Danaki says, RE war on tourism. It's like David Icke put it. If something comes out of nowhere and now is suddenly everywhere, it's part of an agenda. Same as LGBT, transitioning children, pronouns, trans athletes, transhumanism, etc. Yeah, I absolutely agree. If something comes out of nowhere and now it's suddenly everywhere, there's an agenda here. And I think that's exactly was my feeling about this tourism, that it just suddenly, this issue came up and the media are reporting it completely uncritically, in fact, rather flatteringly, and are sort of terribly delighted by essentially physical attacks on tourists. And again, you're attacking people. What have they done? I mean, they're bringing money here. They're keeping restaurants, bars, hotels, everything, Airbnb. They're keeping it going, and you're attacking them. They're not doing any harm for you. So clearly, somebody is behind this. Somebody has created this fake movement, and therefore there's an agenda, and it happily coincides with the Soros agenda and the World Economic Forum agenda, who have been very active in trying to discourage tourism and generally ordinary people living enjoyable lives, just like stop eating meat and stop using that air conditioning and so on. So yeah, absolutely. There's a real agenda here. Stone River, thank you very much. Stone River says, "What did you think of Biden's address to the nation?" So it was a very, very strange uh, address. What was strange about it, of course, is that let's see if I can just bring this up. Can I bring it up? It doesn't look like I can bring it up. Let's see if I can start the screen share. Okay, let's see. Share. I don't know. Can people see this? I don't know. Anyway, here he is in his address. He says, and I know this. We are a great nation because we are a good people. When you elected me to this office, I promised to always level with you, to tell you the truth. And the truth, the sacred cause of this country, is larger than any one of us. And those of us who cherish that cause, cherish it so much, the cause of American democracy itself, must unite to protect it. So I can say that those of us who cherish that cause must unite to protect it. Then he says, in recent weeks, it's become clear to me that I needed to unite my party in this critical endeavor. I believe my record as president, my leadership in the world, my vision for America's future, all merited a second term. But nothing can come in the way of saving our democracy. That includes personal ambition. So what he says here is essentially, I was booted out, I was bundled out, and now I have to accept it for no other reason than the unity of the party. So it says, in recent weeks, it's become clear to me that I needed to unite my party in this critical endeavor. I believe my record as president, my leadership in the world, my vision for America's future, all merited a second term. But nothing can come in the way of saving our democracy. That includes personal ambition. So he says here that, yeah. So, he says that I thought that I deserve a second term. In other words, he said exactly what he's been saying all this time. However, in the name of the unity of the party, I'm stepping aside. So he's pretty much admitting that there was a coup. There was a coup against him. He's leaving involuntarily. I thought I deserve a second term. My accomplishments are so great that I deserve a second term. So why are you stepping aside? In the name of the unity of the party. In other words, they put a gun to my head, and in the name of the unity of my party, I agreed to the demands made of me. That's quite a chilling statement. So, in other words, his only explanation as to why he's ending his presidential run is, I was forced to do so. And in the name of party unity, I have accepted their demand. So it's I mean, all the rest, of course, it was a frail and everything else. However, I mean, it's, you look at it and say, yeah, this is this was a coup, a coup that was engineered against him. He didn't want to go, and the people who wanted him out didn't really present much of a case against him. He doesn't say anywhere here, I decided I couldn't win. No. He still basically thinks that he could have won, but something was done to him. Some threat was issued against him, and in the name of unity, he decided, well, that's it, I'm out of here. So so it was a very kind of very disturbing um, address. Anyway, thank you very much, Stone River. And we got Mary Grossman says, regarding immigration, the Irishman did a video on Telegram recently walking through Dublin City. I haven't seen that. Okay. I mean, if you can post it on the locals page, that'd be great. R. Brown, 1958, welcome. I think you're describing the royal class's utter disgust with the 99.9% unwashed. Our new royalty are the plutocrats like the Soros family and that ilk. Economic dynamism has a tendency to create new wealth centers and displace the old wealth power centers. Bringing in millions of poor people helps the entrenched money keep power. No, that's absolutely right, and that's exactly what they're doing, which is they're bringing in cheap labor and and making sure that the middle class is displaced, and of course, tourism is just something that benefits the middle class. I mean, it benefits shopkeepers, it benefits restaurant owners, benefits bar owners, benefits people who own small hotels. It's so it's it's so obvious that that's when we benefit. Now, of course, for the elites, it doesn't benefit them at all. It's just an annoyance. They walk out of their home and then they see these uncouth people. They look, let's say, the Americans, walking around with their stupid hats and they're overweight and all the various aesthetic disgust that overwhelms them, and they want them out. And there's no question they want to bring in millions of poor people, and that's how you impoverish. It's been going on now for decades. You're impoverishing the public. You're also creating by this mass migration, you're creating social problems which will gradually become insoluble. Endless race conflicts and this race riots, it'll just become a daily occurrence. I mean, you can already see it in the UK, and it's just going to be a daily thing. And that allows rulers to kind of arbitrate between different groups, and while everybody's at everyone else's throat, the rulers can be safely ensconced in their comfy homes. So it works so well for them. And I remember when Soros, it was in 2015, he said the EU should allow in 1 million migrants a year. Said that. He wrote this article in the New York Review of Books, 1 million migrants a year. And the funny thing was he wrote this, and then when people cited this, including Viktor Orban, hey, George Soros believes that the EU should accept 1 million migrants a year, not just this 1 year of 2050, but every single year. So in other words, within 10 years, you bring in 10 million people. And let's keep in, well, the moment people come in, through chain migration, you're massively increasing all the people who are going to be coming in. And then you have the fact checkers who kind of denied, no, Soros never said that. No, Soros never said that. The guy said it. He wrote this article in the New York Review of Books, and there it was. And so, no, Soros never said that. But yeah. So, but whenever there's some really ridiculous, poisonous, anti-human, anti-social movement, something that defies common sense, it means Soros is behind this. Anyways, Cynthia says, as you touched on a bit, George Soros types are also complaining about tourists because they're seeing them as creating too much global warming. something which only the super rich feel they're entitled. Oh, absolutely right, exactly. They get to fly in their own private jets and generally, fly around the world because they are extremely important people, and they should be flying around to their important conferences, meeting other important people. Um, but that doesn't apply to you, because what you want to go to the seaside. What kind of scum are you? You want to, oh, he wants to go to Spain. He wants to enjoy the beaches in Spain. What kind of disgusting, low life are you? It's very funny that it's happening in Spain because, of course, um, tourism. I mean, there was a time when people used to go to the, the sort of the Riviera, or the sort of the French Riviera or the Italian Riviera. But that once that was just way out of everyone's price range, so nobody could actually go to the other. You had to be a kind of a celebrity to be able to go to the French Riviera, or one of those oligarchs, Russian or Ukrainian or Kazakh oligarchs and their trophy wives, who go to the French or Italian Riviera. So they had to go somewhere else. So they went to Spain, and so they go into, that was because at least Spain, the Spanish beaches were affordable. Or they went to Croatia. Again, those beaches were affordable. Or Greece. So that's where now this attack is taking place, because what the hell, you're going to all these places, you're driving around, it's disgusting to have you. So always just remember that line that Marcuse, as I say, Frankfurt School has been very, very influential. They kind of created the whole critical theory, critical racism and whatever, and that was the thing about he can't stand the sight, sound, or smell of the hoi polloi, and that's the view of these Soros types. It's like, we've got these awfully vulgar people, so let's chase them out. Anyway, Cynthia goes on. I recall telling you about Hungarian gypsy music not too long ago, so I thought you might be interested in hearing that when Johannes Brahms was in his mid-teens, he met a Jewish Hungarian violinist, Edward Reményi. They gave concerts together, but more importantly, it was through him that Brahms learned a lot about his folk music. Then he came to love the music so much that he incorporated many elements into his own music. No, that's absolutely right. He wrote some wonderful kind of Hungarian dances, which again was gypsy music. I think we're going to have that. So we've got this. We started the music club, and the first one was Brahms's the Academic Festival Overture, which is kind of a lot of fun. But I do want to do the Brahms's Hungarian dances, because again they're also a lot of fun. I think Brahms is, I think, a wonderful composer. I whenever I hear him, it always cheers me up, and it's just when I look around the grim, dark days which are just ahead, I know Brahms will just put a smile on my face. So anyway, yeah, but that's very interesting about Reményi. So and then Cynthia posts a photograph. Here's a photograph of Brahms on your right, standing next to a violinist, composer Reményi. Let's take a look. Huh? Yeah, he looks kind of young here, Brahms. It's funny that's but the Academic Festival Overture, Brahms composed that when he was awarded a PhD, a kind of an honorary PhD by the University of Breslau, and it was a way of saying thank you, which I always think is very, very nice. Somebody composes a piece of music, well, all right, thank you. Here's a piece of music for you. So, well, that's that's pretty nice. The best of that, of course, is Wagner, who obviously wanted to have a son, And when his wife Cosima finally gave birth to a son, whom he named Siegfried, of course, he wrote a piece of music, to express his gratitude to Cosima, which is the Siegfried Idol, which is again a wonderful piece of music. So that's not a bad thing to get, somebody composes the Siegfried Idol for you. Anyway, yeah. So anyway, thank you, Cynthia, for that. And William Taylor says, apropos of Soros and everyone else, he says, I call them the austerity for thee party. Oh yeah, austerity for thee. Yeah, you get to eat bugs. We get to eat in nice restaurants. We get to eat at, we go to conferences and they always lay on excellent food for us, banquets, first-rate wines. You don't get that. You got to wean yourself off meat. You got to eat bugs. Don't travel. And basically, stay put and think about moving into a smaller home that requires less air conditioning. Carlos says, did you hear about the one about the Russian chef and the Spanish rabbi? Well, I don't know what the reference to the Spanish rabbi is. I mean, I was thinking whether you talking about that Russian chef who has been arrested in France plotting some sort of a whatever they say. We didn't think it was a terrorist attack. It was something. He was planning to sabotage the Paris Olympics, but they didn't really spell out in what way this chef intended to spell it out. I thought to sabotage it. So I thought that maybe he basically stolen some souffle recipes, or a lot of French chefs specialties. How they make one of the best French chefs how he makes his steak au poivre, and he was going to publish these devastating revelations, drive them out of business or whatever. But because I didn't quite see in what way this Russian chef, and he had to be pretty good because he was living in a very nice part of Paris, Rue Saint-Denis, and and so therefore obviously it's a very competitive field to be a chef in Paris. So he was obviously doing rather well, and I don't know, it was strange. What was it? And he had actually worked in even in Michelin-starred restaurants. So what he was planning to do for the Russians was left a blank. But the French authorities, they're on the job. The more you read these things, the more you get a sense that Inspector Clouseau is very much in charge of French policing. Sort of. You can just imagine some Clouseau type arresting. I arrest you for sabotaging the Olympic Games. And I mean, it's a terrible French accent, but Peter Sellers' French accent was just as bad. But you kind of feel that Clouseau had to have come up with that one, with the chef who's sabotaging the games. Anyway, Cynthia goes on. I just saw the governor Josh Shapiro is Jewish. So do you think the Dems may indeed want him as their VP in order to capture the Jewish vote? Well, I think that would obviously be helpful, but I tend to think much more that it's about trying to win Pennsylvania. I mean, he seems to be reasonably popular, according to the polls. He seems to be reasonably popular in Pennsylvania. He's kind of a centrist, so he'd have the contrast with Harris. That because obviously Republicans are going to bring up, Harris's liberal voting record in the Senate and so on. So Shapiro would have a centrism. But I don't know whether the Democrats may well think that, hey, that's a good way of winning the Jewish vote. We have a Jew as the running mate. And that may well be their calculation. I don't think that's going to be in itself very successful. On the other hand, you have to be realistic. Of course, yeah, there are obviously constituencies within the Democratic Party that are unhappy with Israel, Biden's policy on Israel, Gaza, and so on. But ultimately, all of them, the Jews, and basically the Jews, they overwhelmingly vote for Democrats. They always do. They've always done that. And even those Jews who are unhappy one way or another with Biden, there'll be Jews who are unhappy with Biden because he's not doing enough for Israel. There are Jews who are unhappy with Biden because he's too supportive of the Israeli government. Either way, both sets of Jews who are unhappy with Biden, I think they're going to still vote for the Democrats. They say, hey, we got to keep Trump out. However much we object to Biden's policy on Gaza, he's still better than the Orange Man. So it happens every election, with the sole exception, I think in 1980, when I can't remember, but maybe Ronald Reagan may well have got around 40% of the Jewish vote. I'm not sure of the numbers. I think it was about 40%, which is very, very high for a Republican to get 40%. And that was because the Jews really turned against Jimmy Carter. They thought Jimmy Carter was selling out Israel, and that Jimmy Carter really didn't particularly like Israel. I mean, I don't know whether he didn't like Israel. He certainly couldn't stand Menachem Begin. I mean, they're just absolutely allergic to Begin. I mean, couldn't stand even being in the physical presence of Begin, whereas he loved Anwar Sadat. So Camp David the Camp David meetings were really very awkward because Carter had to talk to Sadat, Carter had to talk to Begin. It was very difficult for him to talk to Begin, but he loved spending time with Sadat. So, but anyway, the American Jews really hated Carter, and so I think 40%. I think that's the highest Jews have ever voted for any Republican in 1980 for Ronald Reagan. Anyway, Stone River. So Jenny, always good to see you, Jenny. We don't see enough of you, so nice to have you back. And it says, in the name of self-preservation. Not sure what that refers to. Maybe it refers to me because I have to preserve myself from those savage hounds who literally bite my head off. Anyway, Stone River says the quote threat to democracy attack is fatuous, but do you think it has electoral traction? I don't really. I really don't. I think that's it's too tired by now. It's been overdone, and Trump has already had one go round. He's been president for 4 years. Didn't in any way threaten democracy. And so the Democrats trying to run with that is not good. It just isn't. It lacks any real plausibility. Oh, this time he's going to do something, because ultimately no one really believes that. Even if you want to impose a dictatorship, no one really believes you can do it. I mean, when you think of his first term, a number of cases in which the Trump administration was involved went up to the Supreme Court. Trump won some of them. He lost quite a number of them. He accepted all his defeats. Not once did he say, well, I'm not going to accept this ruling by the Supreme Court. And no one really believes that Trump would reject the ruling of the Supreme Court. And Trump would demand that the military seize power or anything like that. So it lacks plausibility. So I don't think it's going to work. That the Democrats will obviously run with it, and I don't think, and I don't think it's going to work with the felony thing. Um, the the other thing, of course, is the abortion thing, which we talked about the other day. Um, and I tend not to think that it's a great issue. However, the Democrats do have that demographic in mind, which is a very solidly Democrat, which is, of course, single, young, unmarried women. Now, young, unmarried women vote overwhelmingly. It's overwhelming. I mean, it's nothing like that. I mean, I think it's like, like other than, let's say, Jews for the Democrats. I think, the closest that any group comes to Jews and Democrats is young, unmarried women. Overwhelming for the Democrats. And I think an abortion obviously plays a part in that. But the problem is that that's already baked in. How many more young unmarried women can you bring over to your column to make a difference in the election? Because they're already solidly for the Democrats. They would already have been voting for the Democrats without Harris banging on about abortion. So I don't know if that will vote. I think the biggest issue will be the cheating. I think there's going to be absolute enormous amount of cheating in this election. I mean, for all sorts of ways, which is why I still think it's going to be a very close race, and it's close. And I don't at all assume that Trump is going to win this. So I think it's going to be very, very close, and the Democrats have been masters always of stealing elections. So I think that's I think the big one. I don't think they have the issues. I just don't think in this election they have the issues that are working for them. I mean, we have these economic indicators and so on, but with the economy, it's just what people feel. Do people feel they're better off or they're not? It doesn't matter what the New York Times. Oh, big GDP growth numbers, fantastic. Oh yeah, Bidenomics is working. However much Krugman says this, and New York Times editorial board says it. It's a matter of what do people feel. Do people feel that they're doing well or they don't? And obviously they don't feel that they're doing well. So it's not going to work for them. I think foreign policy doesn't work for the Democrats. Immigration, in a very big way, isn't working for them. And so all these other things, the threat to democracy, abortion, I just don't think it's going to play to any strengths. I mean, what really works for Democrats, the big issue is the economy. That's one that they've really done. When the economy isn't doing well, that works really well for the Democrats, because then people feel they're hard up, and the Democrats are going to protect them. It happened in 1992 against George H.W. Bush, where Bush seemed to, he looked like a competent leader. He was very, very, very uncharismatic, very, very unexciting, more of a kind of chief executive of a big corporation than a president. Nonetheless, he was competent. He seemed to know what he was doing. But the economy was tanking, and that really worked well for Bill Clinton, who in many ways was totally unsuitable to be president. And then, of course, in 2008, when you have this neophyte Barack Obama with no track record whatsoever, no one knew anything about him, but that was the year of the crash, and he won for him. But in this case, the because the Democrats have been in power for the past 4 years, and people aren't feeling well economically, the Democrats are going to fail, at least on that on that issue. I mean, because that's the big one, and it's not working for them. Anyway, Stone River, thank you so much. Jenny, always thank you very much, or thank you for your generosity. And where are we? Yeah. And then R. Brown says, to continue on the middle class destruction. Yeah. During COVID lockdowns, 3 million US small family businesses were closed. Yeah. While the huge companies were given special treatment. Absolutely right. The main target of the great replacement is the middle class. Absolutely correct. Who loses with cheap labor, green energy policies, high food prices, and the like? The middle class. Oh, absolutely right. You're absolutely correct. All of that, green energy, and which has caused all the turmoil in so many countries with farmers and truckers and everything else. And of course, by locking down, the lockdowns all hurt small businesses, because it's the small businesses who suddenly, hey, where did our customers go? So they were all collapsed. And of course, the thing to remember about the lockdowns is that the people who ordered the lockdowns, they didn't really want to lift them. I mean, they wanted the lockdowns to continue. And of course, the tourism industry just collapsed. Remember, absolutely collapsed in 2020, 2021, and a lot of countries were suddenly, up against it. And of course, it was really causing deep hardships in a number of countries that relied on foreign currency coming in. And of course, all these Soros types, they were purring, very happily. They couldn't care less. But what happened is that after the lockdowns were lifted, then of course tourism revived. So again, it's very interesting that just as tourism has revived, has recovered after those disastrous 2 years, but suddenly we have this anti-tourist movement. No, we want to go back. We want to go back to the COVID era when everything was locked down. No one traveled anywhere. And everyone was suffering because there were no tourists. No, yeah, that's what we want to go back to. So it's very interesting that this onslaught on tourism is happening, just as the tourist industry is recovering from that absolutely nightmare that was inflicted through the COVID lockdowns. But you're absolutely right. The corporations had a very good time of it. They made a huge amount of money, and they could do their work at home on their computers, get their food delivered, and then of course they could do all their transactions online, something that ordinary businesses could not do. So it was a massive transfer of wealth. I mean, when you think of how well Bezos did, Bezos of Amazon, it was a staggering. I think the value of his stock went up by 100%, or maybe even more than 100%. And that's not just Amazon. I mean, so many of these corporations, their stock boomed, while others were out of work. Gym owners. All the gym owners who suddenly were out of business. All the restaurant owners, cafe owners, are all out of business. But Bezos and the others, they were doing very nicely. So no question. I mean, there were a lot of people who want to go back to the glory days of COVID. And R. Brown goes on, the rich need to get us all on the mouse wheel spinning like crazy to get by. Less time to think about how we're getting screwed by policies that rob the middle class. Less time to figure out how to spread the wealth a bit more broadly. Yeah, that's right. And that's why I think all these kind of pseudo and phony kind of race issues, always work for the corporations, the rulers. So today in the UK you had an attack on some army officer. I think it was a colonel, attacked by a Nigerian. Nice, so you brought a Nigerian into the country, and now he goes and attacks with a knife an army officer. But this happens a great deal. And then you have somebody getting his head kicked in at Manchester Airport. So that's all in one day. Head kicked in by the police at Manchester Airport. He seemed to be some Muslim guy, and so boom, boom. That's going to keep the pot boiling. These two issues keep everyone on talking about these two crises. And of course, you're not talking about anything substantial, because now we're talking about Islamophobia and the police, racism, and then you got this why would a Nigerian have a nervous breakdown? It always has to be something like that. He can't be a racist, so it's a nervous breakdown to such an extent that he attacks a colonel with a knife. That's it. That's how you play it. And Carlos FS says, I just thought it sounded like the start of a joke. Okay, that's a good one. The Russian chef and the Spanish rabbi. That's good. Yeah, good. I'd like be great to come up with a joke. A Russian chef and a Spanish rabbi go to a bar together. Jenny says the non-Jews seem more radical in American politics towards Israel. Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, I think that the Jews who are the kind of the anti-Israel movement, I think, in the United States, I think, is driven by Jews. I think they're very influential. I mean, you have the grandfather of it was, of course, Noam Chomsky, who began writing about this in the 1960s, wrote some great books and articles about Israel. And then, of course, you had Norman Finkelstein, who is still very active. And then you have people like Max Blumenthal, Aaron Maté, all of whom are Jews. And they are very influential. And then, of course, many of these protests against Israel, like many of the protests that took place yesterday when Netanyahu spoke, they were led by Jews. However, you'd have to say, though, that they are a minority. I think they're influential. They're they make the intellectual arguments. But the problem is that fundamentally in the United States, that it just doesn't have much resonance. Ultimately, you have to be cruel about it. Americans just don't care very much about the Palestinians. I mean, I think that's true more or less in Europe, other than that in Europe now you've got a very substantial Muslim population. Now, the Muslim population does care very much about the Palestinians. And that might change again in the United States once the United States starts acquiring a substantial Muslim population. It doesn't have one yet, other than in certain states, such as Michigan, where that is an important issue. But other than that, most of us just couldn't care less about Israel. And the ones who do care are, fervently pro-Israel, other than, as I say, the small kind of esoteric, and it is kind of esoteric. I mean, people like Blumenthal and Aaron Maté, it's a small group, and they're very good. They make very good arguments, but you still have to think, that it's not going to move the election. There's just not enough votes there to move an election. but as I say, in Europe, it is a little different. I mean, once you acquire uh, quite large Muslim populations, then you can no longer just simply say, "Oh well, I'm with BB." Abraham says Remini reminds me of the actor Raymond Massey in the lead role of Abe Lincoln in Illinois. Raymond Massey. That goes back a long way. Yeah, I always I liked Raymond Massey. He had a real presence. He was in was it the Fountainhead? It was there. It was that's kind of one of his big roles. Um, and then Stone River says, "Thank you, Stone River. Appreciate it." Biden is the one making ominous threats about the Supreme Court, including in his creepy address. Yes, exactly. He did that. Let's go. Let's find where he does that, because he said something quite creepy. Let's start the screen. Let's see if I can do that. Find what his exact wording. He says blah blah. After he talks about he says that I'm going to keep speaking out to protect our kids from gun violence, our planet from the climate crisis, a familiar Democratic talking point. It's an existential threat. No, it isn't. And I will keep fighting for my cancer moonshot so we can end cancer as we know it, because we can do it. And then he says, and I'm going to call for Supreme Court reform because this is critical to our democracy, Supreme Court reform. Now, that's really very interesting because the Supreme Court, again, is that's a supposedly the highest court, the one whose rulings you have to accept. And then you say, well, why is he attacking the Supreme Court? Well, because they're delivering rulings that you don't like. Now, let's remember the Supreme Court is, after all, has given rulings that went against Trump as well, and this court, not just the pre-Trump court. This is the post-Trump court. In other words, the court that he had nominated 3 justices to, has ruled against him. It ruled against him in 2020 when he was challenging the certification of the election. Basically, it just said, we're not going to take the case. We're not going to get involved. That was the Trump court. So that was okay. You like that? It's this Supreme Court that incidentally sided with the Biden administration on the issue of free speech, the First Amendment case about government essentially censoring social media. People expected, conservatives particularly expected that this Supreme Court will side against the Biden administration and in favor of free speech and the First Amendment rights of social media. It didn't. It sided with Biden. So, these are substantial victories for Biden's side. But because you don't win all of them, you don't win all of the cases, he wants Supreme Court reform. And remember, Biden was the one who's given these lectures. Trump is one of those people. He only likes democracy when democracy goes his way. He doesn't like democracy when it doesn't go his way. Well, that's exactly the way one should think of a Biden. You like the Supreme Court when it goes your way. When it doesn't vote your way, then you want Supreme Court reform. So what is the Supreme Court reform? Well, I assume, the only thing he can mean is packing the court, bringing on more justices. But I don't really understand why one would think that if you bring more justices on, then that's going to go in your favor. Yeah, I mean, if he brings on a bunch of Ketanji Jackson types, yeah, that's fine. That's going to go in your direction. But then the Republicans are going to come in, and then the moment, let's say you've increased the size of the court from 9, I don't know, let's say you've increased it to 13. So you now got 13 justices, and you've brought on all these Ketanji Jacksons. Great, you've now got a majority. Okay, then the Republicans win, and then they increase the size of the Supreme Court to 17. And then they bring on 4 conservatives. I mean, at what point does it end? I mean, you can just keep increasing the size of the Supreme Court, and then each just in the hope that you're going to win the cases. So it's his threats against the Supreme Court were just simply really, and particularly, and incidentally, I mean, that immunity ruling, the one that he was so indignant about, that's going to work in your favor, because without that immunity ruling, Biden could well have been vulnerable to prosecution. I mean, the issue of the border, it could have been prosecuted on that if he didn't have immunity. Hey, you're violating your oath of office to protect the nation's borders. You encouraged the invasion of the country. So the immunity would there work in Biden's favor. Not to mention all the other matters, even the criminal matters that Biden could be prosecuted for, which now he wouldn't be able to, because they wouldn't be able to use any of the materials that involved any official act. So any evidence coming from any official acts of Biden's couldn't be used in any possible prosecution of Biden, maybe for non-official acts, with Hunter and all these business dealings and whatever. So Biden should be bloody grateful that the Supreme Court ruled the way it did on the issue of presidential immunity. Anyway, thank you, Stone River, and again, thank you again. It says they feel inflation, which is cumulative. Yeah, that's exactly right. I think people feel inflation, and that's why it's not working for Biden. Why do people think, hey, I'm not doing well? And Paul Krugman says, why are people so stupid? It's always, people are always stupid. It's like the tourists are stupid. People are stupid in thinking that they're not doing well in this economy. Well, yeah, you're right. The inflation is cumulative. You've had year after year of inflation, and people notice that they're paying more for the same items. How much am I paying for a loaf of bread today as opposed to how much I was paying 3 years ago? Okay, you say, yeah, well, actually, I'm paying twice as much. Is my pay twice as high as it was 3 years ago? No, it is not. And then the same thing, how much am I paying for fuel today as opposed to what I was paying 3 years ago? That's a big increase. Has my pay increased, commensurately in that time? No. So of course, that's why people feel, yeah, I'm not doing well. So you're absolutely right. Jenny says, have a drink on me. What's that you're supping? This drink, Jenny, thank you so much, Jenny. This is actually, I know it looks like a scotch, but it isn't. It's just actually Czech beer. I'm not normally a beer drinker. I don't particularly like beer, but I've got hooked on Czech beer since coming here to Hungary. So and particularly when it's a very warm day, it's always nice to drink a kind of a cold Czech beer. But if it's not Czech beer, I just don't like it. And go anywhere else and I say, do you have any Czech beer? No, no, no. But we do have a beer that is very, very similar to Czech beer. Um, okay, well, give me that beer. And then they bring some shit in a glass, and they say, "Is that this is very similar to Czech beer?" No, it isn't. Take it away. So it's something that's very, very specific for me. So anything else, I wouldn't drink it. Space Buns, thanks for the show. Thank you so much, Space Buns. Always good to see you. And then Space Buns says the Ron Paul Institute conference is in DC next month. You should be there. Told you last time that the wife and I heard your name dropped. Oh, that's good. Think about it. If not this year, maybe next year. That's a thought actually. That's the one. Denaki says Pilsner Urquell. That's the one I drink. Pilsner Urquell is one of the best beers around. That's it. That's the one I drink. But Denaki says, yeah, it's one of the best beers around. Yeah, no. Thanks for bringing that name up. I think it is. It's one of the best beers. So even for people who are not madly keen on beer, this stuff is really quite special. Okay, let's see if we got a few comments on YouTube. We got a lot of somebody 20 times 20 goes, do you even like Scotch? Yes, I do. I'm a big Scotch fan. Yeah, I'm a huge. There's a very good whiskey place in Budapest. It's called Good Spirit Bar. Yeah, Good Spirit Bar. Yeah. Not far from here, where they have excellent scotches. What always annoys me about any of these Scotch places is that they always go through this whole routine of measuring out very, very precisely, like almost like, from a pipette. If you remember from laboratories, pipette, you want to make sure it's got to be 2.2 milliliters into your test tube. You have to have a pipette, and then you have to burette to measure everything exactly. And you think, oh, give me a break, just pour the damn Scotch. I mean, I'm paying enough for it. Just pour the damn thing. I mean, but no, they have to measure it really accurately, because it's so expensive. Where mustn't give him 1/10 of a millimeter extra, 1/10 of a milliliter extra of Scotch. Really annoying. But otherwise, it's really good Scotch. Let me see. Go back here. Yeah. Anyway. Putin says Russia never said it was going to divide up Kiev. What are you talking about? I never said Russia said it was going to divide up Kiev. What I am talking about is the Xenon people who do talk about Russia taking Kiev and taking Odessa. But you're right. Russia's never said that. But my commentary was on the Xenon crowd who are always celebrating and always doing high fives. Anyway, so we have God. Putin shows that you conflate winning with having to wiggle out of answering the question. Russia is winning, whether you decide so or not. Well, I mean, I'll just say this once. There's no such thing as winning. I mean, that doesn't exist. You've either won or you haven't won. This isn't like, like it's a football match where we're winning 1-0. Anything can happen in a war. All sorts of things. We could have, a more direct, explicit NATO intervention. We can have, some fake false flag attacks. Um, but you either have to, when you win, you win. You then have to achieve strategic objectives. You have to achieve, at the minimum, the goals that you have set out. There's no such thing as winning. You go, well, we're winning. Winning what? What are you winning? Have you taken Kherson City? Is it? I mean, you got it, or you're going to take it next week? Well. So, I mean, just simply saying, well, we've taken this village and you've taken that village. Okay, fine, that's good. So ultimately, the winning part is how close are you to achieving the objectives that you set out for yourself? No one else set it out. The objectives that Russia set out for itself. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying Ukraine is winning. I never said Ukraine was winning. I don't think Ukraine can win this war. That's a given. Ukraine cannot win this war. But that could also mean that this war could go on for quite some time. And the longer a war goes on, the more risks that are involved, the more things that can go wrong. And then, who knows? Anyway. God, this is real hard, really hard to read all this. Meg Gallucci says Kamala is supported by Alex Soros. Yeah, he was one of the first to come out and support her, as was Hillary Clinton. And then Gurney Hellick says, and Soros makes money off chaos. Yep, absolutely. Hugh Keenan says, at one point during Biden's speech, he spoke as if he would step down, sadly not. Speech sounded as if he intended earlier announcement regarding 2024 election. That speech was the speech of someone who had been overthrown by a coup, who basically is signaling to the public, I have been overthrown in a coup. I'm very unhappy about it, but there's nothing that I can do. Essentially, they put a gun to my head, and I have to say, in the name of party unity, I'm stepping down involuntarily. Mr. Boston says, there's a movie I want you to watch, a French film called Occult Forces. Want to hear something? Occult Forces. Arroyo Liotta Aroya Leota says, good morning from Sydney. That's good. Thank you. Good morning. Always nice to have our Australian contingent here. Mm. Mr. Boston, I think, is suggesting Mozart's 33rd Symphony. Okay. Quite like Mozart, late Mozart symphonies. I'm not a huge um, Mozart fan, but I do like his late symphonies. Um, and So it says here, Trump was a lifelong, Mr. Boss, a lifelong Democrat. I think Trump was kind of all over the place because he was a Democrat. He was also a Republican at some point. He was obviously also an independent. So um, I don't think Trump has ever really had any firm set of beliefs, except on I think on economic questions. I think he's always been a managed trade sort of person. I mean, I think he's always believed in tariffs and the use of tariffs to protect American industries. I think that's a fairly consistent position. On everything else, I think it's kind of moved around from position to position. Um, um, so just. Um, So Jenny says, just ordered some Pilsner Urquell from Morrison's. Yeah. That's very good. Put it in the fridge and drink it when it's cold. It's just incredibly refreshing. Shelley Northwest says, Putin and Xi know what to do with the Soros types. Yeah, I think a number of people are getting quite sophisticated with Soros types, about sophisticated in keeping them out. And then there's a number of countries. Georgia's one of those countries now. Hey, we got to keep them out. Um, Jenny says German beer doesn't give you a hangover. By law, they can't add any shit to it, like they seem to in the UK. Uh, um, Shelley Northwest says Mozart's Magic Flute. Yeah, I'm not madly keen on the opera itself. I do love the overture. The overture is a lot of fun, but the opera itself just doesn't do it for me. I mean, in terms of if you look on Mozart's operas, I mean, I like The Marriage of Figaro. Um, and Don Giovanni. Um, but the rest, not doesn't do it for me. But anyway, thank you so much, everybody. I mean, I think my time is up. Thank you for all of the um, comments. Thank you for all of the questions, suggestions. The disagreements. So that's always fun. Um, and next Monday we're going to have our movie showing. Please vote. It's a tense battle for next Monday's movie. It's a battle between Falling Down and The Passenger. I think last time I looked, they were neck and neck. So it's very exciting. So please vote if you haven't um, done so. And then we're going to be here in the weekend, and then we'll do a live stream next Monday, and then I'm going to do my own personal live stream on Tuesday. So thank you for that. Thank you above all to those who have contributed to the tip jar, because I need hardly repeat again. Those dogs are just they just go for the throat. They don't mess. They just go for the throat. They have that instinctive savagery. And so it's very hard dealing with them. So anyway, thank you for today, and see you next week. All the best. Good night. Bye bye.